Hello, everybody. It's a really rainy day in Vancouver today, and I am having a nice hot cup of tea. So I just wanted to step in really quickly and say we're going to have a great time today. It's going to be all about purpose. And what I love about purpose is it's a human journey for all of us. It's not something that we all don't sort of in some way process. What's really cool is that we all do it really differently. I know that a lot of people that I know, clients, friends, family, they knew totally what they wanted to do when they were younger. And they just went for it. They knew it, they did it, and it was purposeful and fulfilling for them. And they've had meaningful journeys through that. The other process is that there's people like me who take a lifetime to sort of figure that out. There is a way to shortcut that, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think that that's what coaches and clients, coaches, counselors, and work with our clients doing. So I'm just going to let our lovely guest in today and say hello to Thomas. So purpose is our conversation today. And I love this topic because, as I said, everyone's had a different experience. Mine's been this long journey all the way along, and other people just know. However, what we know when we're 20 doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be our purpose when we're 40 or 50 or 60. As I said, it's a journey, whether you start at 20 knowing what you're doing and what you're not. So I wanted to just say, Thomas and I are going to talk about what purpose is and what it isn't and all that kind of stuff. But hello, Thomas. So I just wanted to start with the definition, because I went, well, what is the definition? I know what it feels like. I don't know what it is. So a sense of purpose means dedicating yourself to a cause beyond yourself. It's a goal that fuels your motivation in life, giving your life meaning and direction, inspiring you to make a significant contribution to the world. Now, Viktor Frankl is a very famous psychologist, and he states that humans are driven by the necessity to seek meaning in their lives by committing to a cause or purpose outside themselves. So that sounds already lofty and really good, but how do we do all that? How do we find it? How do we discover it and experience it and be on that path so that our lives do have that meaning and fulfillment thereafter, I think, is what happens if we find the meaning. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, and I think it's going to be really fun, and I hope that if you do have anything you want to say, we can read the comments, no problem, down below, and so please tell us what you think as we go. So we're going to have Thomas on again, Thomas Kevin Dolan. I introduced him last week, so I hope some of you already know him. He's my awesome colleague and friend. He's been helping me this morning with my earphones. Now, I do just want to say that I'm waiting for my proper earphones, but they didn't arrive. So I'm using old ones, and I've never done that before, never used them. So it's like, okay, sounds a little funny in there. But I hope you can all hear me okay. So now what I wanted to share, which I already did, was just a little bit about my own journey, was that I've never had any clue about any of that. And I think mostly because I think back in the day when we were kids, I don't think our parents really taught us that. And maybe some of you did, but not me. Because for me, what it's I've come to realize that it really is following a path that follows my values and my principles. So in knowing that, becoming aware of what those things are, and the idea that how do I want to make a difference in the world? Like, what are my gifts? Acknowledging all that, finding all that, as I said, being an archaeologist. So it has taken me a really long time. And I have two sides of me that values beauty and design. And I have that side, and that feels very purposeful when I'm doing a room up, as it were, and all the pieces are telling me where they want to go. But I also have this really, really fulfilling side that's about supporting and loving people and helping people through their journeys, whatever that is, to an authentic place in their lives. So that's really deep and meaningful as well. So I have like all these things that I find purposeful. This is so relevant this week for me Thank you for your patience, Thomas. In that I have 4 sons, and I've been reflecting on their journeys to purpose and meaning and what those all really look like. And I think they're interesting stories because, again, they're all different. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. So my oldest started out, got a couple degrees and kind of went, what kind of meandered around and then went, whoop, let's go sideways. This is what's going to be purposeful. Bringing all of those pieces in together as he matured. My second son, he knew when he was a kid. He drew, all his projects were all on boats, and that's what gives him purpose and meaning. So he now has his own company. He works on boats just like he did when he was a kid. Like, it was just like, that's him. And it comes through him, his love for that. My third son, I think, is just discovering that, oh, wait a minute. I actually have a choice here about what is going to be meaningful for me, and it's not the same as it was when I was younger. My fourth son, I'm just loving the process he's going through. And he's in his mid-20s, is getting closer to 30. He is really sitting with, wait a minute, what are my values and principles, and what is it that's going to be purposeful for me? And so he told me what he thought. And because I knew we were doing this talk today, I said to him, so what's your why? Because last week or the week before, Thomas goes, so what's the why? And I'm like, I never use why. We're trained never to use why as a counselor, but using it in the way that Simon Sinek says, your why. He went, oh, okay. And then he totally took it into what the why was for him. And I just thought, oh, what a gift. So I just had this really big week around purpose. So I'm really looking forward to you telling me, Thomas, some of the things that we talked about that you wanted to share. So I've shared all my stuff so far. So how about you tell us, because you were going to actually go into your thoughts on what purpose is and what purpose isn't. So I would love it if you shared that with us. Is that where you wanted to start? Or please tell us, just start wherever you want.
Thank you, Mheyah. First of all, it's amazing to be back. Thank you for hosting this. I love this combination of energy that you and I have, and of course, a big hello to all those that are watching and listening. And thank you for landing on definition. I often think the challenge in language for us, particularly with other people, is this notion of not being clear in the beginning what the definition of what it is that we're working with. So I think you nailed it. I would add to that one little bit that I found, and of course, when I went looking for a definition, that obviously one resonates in my heart, but when I went to the dictionary, the one that I loved, and I'll add to yours, is a person's sense of resolve or determination can be a big part of their purpose. Yeah, resolve and determination. Resolve and determination.
Resolve and determination. Wow, those are big words.
Aren't they big words?
In meaning.
Yes. Yeah, resolve. And when I began to kind of lean back on my purpose, and I'll share that in a moment, the first thing I went to, when you and I were busy creating this partnership to do Instagram Live, what was the first thing that we landed on that we thought was important?
Connection.
Do you remember? Well, absolutely, connection. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But I think we both landed on this notion of, what would our purpose be for this?
Oh yeah, that's in the conversation when you said, well, what is our why?
What is our why? That's exactly right. And I went back to it and I thought we did two things. We did goal, which is kind of the end toward which we want to direct our energy. And we landed on this. And I just want to share it with folks. We want to entice your heart and mind, of course, with the conversations we have by producing this Instagram Live, where connection, we also chose complexity, which I think is really wonderful, vulnerability, and curiosity collide, right? All of this will be done one conversation at a time.
I love that. When you came, and Thomas did the writing for that, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit. And actually, when I posted it, I added one word. I added courage.
Courage. Oh, that's right, Mheyah. Yeah, thank you. Because, wow, I know that you're mustering it up to show up. I'm certainly mustering up to show up. And I'm going to suggest I'm going to assert that folks, if they choose to do work around purpose or strengthen their purpose or have a desire to change purpose, you are so correct. It is the courageous, right? By choosing to be vulnerable, first of all, it is only those that are vulnerable that are brave. It takes a tremendous amount of work. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. Courage. Yes, indeed, courage. Yeah, indeed. And as I began to kind of lean into this, and in a little bit of a research I did, I landed on this notion of that it's believed by many, right, that each of us is born with this unique life purpose, if you will, and this desire to identify, to acknowledge it, and to be able to honor ourselves with this purpose might be for some of us the most important action we can take in our lifetimes. It certainly was for me to align the desire I really wanted to create in my lifetime. It had me kind of sit up a long time ago, because I was also witness to, I shared before, I came from a big family and some amazing people, amazing siblings. But what I noticed growing up was that there wasn't a clear purpose in terms of either what my family was about and some of the individuals. So they inspired me very early on to think, I think I want to land on who I want to be in my life, who I want to be in the world, and ultimately, what can I do to actually make sure that both of those are a 1 and 1 equal 2? Does that make sense?
Can I ask you a quick question? How old were you
course.
when you kind of figured that piece out?
Wow. I have this great story, Mheyah. I'm in grade 5, elementary school. I'm holding hands with a male teacher in elementary school who I chose just walk up and down the recess kind of parade square at an elementary school in Calgary. And I just listened to this wisdom. And of course, when I reflect on it now, I think for little younger gay Thomas, I think this gentleman, although at that time, obviously, in the 60s didn't come out, and nor would it would have been appropriate for him to do that. But I think that he was also a gay man. And I remember I'm looking up at him as he's talking, and he looked down at me and he said, Tommy, he said, at some point in time, it might be important for you to surround yourself with some other people other than your family. I think he knew some of the challenges of the Dolans at that time, and begin to look towards kind of who you want to be in your life. So grade 5, Mheyah, is when it started to kind of tug at my heart and, of course, my mind. Grade 5.
That's beautiful. I remember being 6 years old and having a moment like that. 6 years old.
Isn't that amazing?
And looking around at all these people. We were at a Christmas party at our house, and sitting there and going, no one's talking about anything real in my little 6-year-old mind, and going, there was a clue in there about what was important to me. And I've often thought, I can actually viscerally remember that moment. And I thought, no one's being authentic and no one's telling the truth. And what is everybody doing? I remember just sitting there sort of like, oh, this just feels weird. That my path had something to do with authenticity at that time. So I love that story, because I think some of those things happen when we're young. We might pass them by and not follow that path at that time. But when we go back and reflect, they have impact. They had meaning, those moments, I think.
They do. And of course, when I tell that story, even think, wow, I was listening to this wisdom at grade 5, and there would be many, many times in my life as a much older person where I wasn't listening to wisdom that would come my way. But that is so easily accessible for me as kind of the epicenter of beginning to ponder. So Mheyah, it was, who do you want to be? It wasn't, what do you want to do, right? Do you want to be a professional football player? It's who you want to be, which I thought was really interesting. Right? Because I have this little quip. I'm a far better human being than I am a human doing.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful sentence, isn't it?
Thank you.
It's so true.
It is. It inspires me that when I get clear about the foundation of how it is that I want to be in my life, and of course that has every ability for me to be perhaps that energy in other people's lives, it is a great remembering for me. It is a really great remembering for me. Who are you going to be, Thomas? Who are you going to be?
Well, because when you know that, when you know who you're going to be, and that does include knowing what you need and what you value. And a lot of this information about yourself can come out of what it is that you need. Well, maybe somebody, just for example, really for me, I really need clear communication. That's something that, is a value now for me and a principle I stand on. So that's been kind of my path through that. So it is who we are that needs to show up so we can actually find our purpose that comes out of that. Would you say that was true or no?
Oh, absolutely. You mirror
Yeah.
back to me. I would land on two necessities for me. I'm right there with you in terms of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm right there. And it took me a long time to struggle. I had this judgment around confusion, right? That when I found myself in that place, I wasn't all that gracious or loving towards myself. And then I discovered by allowing myself to be confused, it was the entrance point to clarity. So now I can love myself. Yeah, I can love myself when I'm confused, as opposed to chasing it away, thinking that I shouldn't be confused, right? The old should, and I'm really always aware of not shoulding all over myself. But confusion,
I always use that too.
Yeah, I do too. Confusion to clarity. So giving myself that permission because my process to creating life's purpose for me, and of course it's evolved, like I'm sure many people's have evolved, and it may even change tomorrow for that matter, was through this notion of, okay, I'm okay being confused about it, and I eventually got clear to the point where I could share with you and our watchers and listeners in terms of how that lives for me today, as far as a purpose statement is concerned. So yeah, I like confusion. It works for me now.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think we talked about that a bit last week when we used the word uncertainty.
Absolutely.
So uncertainty, confusion, that's actually when a lot of people, when they're in that state, go, I need help. Let's get a coach or a counselor. So that feeling of confusion, uncertainty, ambivalence, not knowing that place, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's hard to, what we might say, it's hard to be with that and allow it, like what you're saying, and embrace it and go, okay, I'm confused, right? And that's okay. So I love that, because I think that we set ourselves up for an incredible amount of judgment. I know I'm totally guilty of doing that to myself for my whole life until now. And that it really holds us back from being able to be okay with the process. I think that that's what going to school actually really helped a lot for me. Doing my counseling degree was just that allowing of all of those human processes and journeys, and that they're actually normal. There's nothing wrong with them.
No, and from this vantage point, I can see how all of that is tied into who I experience you being, and how it is that you're using those gifts to actually support people in perhaps finding their way through a point in time that you also went through. So it's kind of handing something back into the mix to support people in them moving from that place that might be, I don't know, I'm uncertain, I'm confused, to a point that would be much, much clearer for them, much clearer for them. So I just think kudos to you for taking that gift and that process and weaving it through and coming out there and going, oh, okay, now this feels more in alignment with who it is that I am in my life, and then ultimately being able to give from that vantage point. So purpose.
But so is that not exactly what we're talking about as well, is recognizing, well, wait a minute, like, and I'm always saying this to my youngest, is, wait a minute, you've got some real big gifts here that you're like, that you need to bring to the world, even if it's only one conversation at a time. And he goes, well, I think I do that, in my job. And I'm going, no, you are he's like a very, very heart-centered man. And he has a gift like you do. He's a kind of man like you, where he really, he's okay with process. He gives himself permission. He's okay with the ups and the downs. And he is highly emotionally intelligent like you are. And I think that he has that gift. So I keep saying, you need to bring that gift into whatever it is you feel that you want to do with your time. Like, I'm not going to call it a career, or it's where you want to put your energy. And then the other question is that I ask him, and I don't know if this is relevant to you or not, but help me out, is I think if we struggle sometimes with that, the one question I really love, which is, I find information in what it is I don't like, in terms of what it is that upsets me in the world. What is it that I would want to change? So the question would be, what do I want to change in this world? If I had all the influence and I didn't what would I do? What would be my why in terms of what do I want to change about the world? Well, for me, it goes hugely deep into that place of authenticity, respect, equality, justice, all of those things. And so I know that I am on purpose when I'm doing our work, the work that we do, because those are things that I want to change about the world. And I want relationships to be better. I don't want people to have to work through the pain. I want them to be able to communicate in effective ways and create positivity rather than negativity. So for me, I know I'm on purpose when I'm working with one person, or a couple, to help them bring those things into their life. Does that make sense?
It does me. And first of all, I'm really appreciating that this gorgeous young man of yours, your son, is supported by you and encouraged to, right, find purpose. But you reflected back to him all the ways that he shows up in the world that, for all intents and purposes, might be his purpose, so that there might not be a need for him in this lifetime to engage in, like I did, some kind of process, some kind of learning, a little bit of an in-depth dive for me to land on purpose. He might be living it. And of course, although I believe the future is female, I really think the encouragement for him, and particularly men, to be heart-centered and be encouraged to kind of reflect from within what that energy is for them and how they can bring it to the world. What a gorgeous story. And for him, I wasn't supported in that heart-centeredness of myself. I wasn't supported in my sensitivity. And that's all okay, because eventually, I think the point is that I just landed on it, and the timing was impeccable, although my ego would suggest it might have happened sooner. But I just love that here's a young man who is being encouraged to discover what this resonance is in his heart. And I think he hears from his mom, it would be okay to bring it to the world.
Thank you. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're
Because
welcome.
I do believe a lot like you that, society has really made this imbalance in terms of our male and female energy. And for men to then be able to embrace that, what we would term more feminine qualities or energy,
Yes.
which isn't necessarily true. I mean, I think men have them. They just have to embrace them. That's what I think anyway. And know that it's okay. There's nothing
Yes.
bad with female energy or
No.
female qualities. It's interesting how we've made that to be true. And of course, I've wanted all of my men to be able to tap into that part of themselves and integrate it into their masculinity, and that one doesn't diminish the other, that it's all. Anyway, I'm getting really deep now, aren't I?
I love it. You remind me, I put in the midst of the challenge for our Asian friends, family, my husband as an Asian man in the midst of what's going on in the US, and not for a second do I think it's not going on here in Canada, but I posted a picture, and it's a gorgeous Asian man holding a sign that says, boys will be, and of course it says boys, but he's crossed out. Boys will be boys, crossed out. Boys will be feminists. And imagine if the teaching jumped a little bit deeper and encouraged young men, and even to start at 5 and 6, to encourage them to really embrace that side of them. Imagine how it is that they could show up in the world in a different way than perhaps we're seeing some of the generations today as far as our young men are concerned. So keep going deep, Mheyah. Keep going deep. I mean, particularly with your boys. Yeah,
well, I do, and I think the majority of them would say that they are feminists, and in fact, in some way, they're sort of more conscious of feminism than I am. It's not that I'm not, but I just think that they, in their partnerships and in their lives, I believe that they would say, "I'm a feminist," and I think that they would see that and I see that as a really important quality for them. And one of their guiding principles. So, I love that we're talking about this, because I think it really does move into purpose. The more that men, women, people, just humans can tap into their real selves, then the change will happen. Their authentic selves, what's really in there, not by society's definitions or any other construct that changes who we are authentically or says we're right or wrong or whatever. Yeah. And I just really believe that. So purpose, I think, is absolutely where you will find if purpose, you will find within authenticity, within your truth, and life will be more meaningful because you're contributing. And at the end of the day, that's one of our biggest needs as a human, is it not? To contribute.
I'll own it. It's mine. There's no doubt about that. And as I was
Mm-hmm.
digging into this, I found one of the great humanitarians that I think existed and took his last breath at a much, much younger age is Chadwick Boseman, right?
Oh, yes.
Wakanda Forever. And I actually listened to it last night. It was a commencement address that he did at his alma mater, Howard University, I think in May 2018. And I thought I would just share it because it's quintessential in relation to what we're talking about. But more importantly, I think he nailed it. He said this: purpose is an essential element of you. So he's addressing the graduates, right? It's a purpose essential of you. It's the reason you were put on this planet at this particular time in history, which I thought was amazing. He goes on to say your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Whatever you choose for a career path, remember the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
What a beautiful speech. I'm going to have to go and listen to that.
Yeah, really wonderful. And I think his relatability, I mean, first of all, Howard is a Black university, which I think is amazing. So his relatability as a graduate, and of course they would occasionally pan to, the young folks that are graduating, and just the resonance with what it was he was saying philosophically, but also it was really practical as well. So it reminded me, right, that life purpose can consist of, right, kind of a central motivating aim for our lives. My purpose really inspires me to get up in the morning. So I think that's a challenge, right? My life purpose is this, right, to create love in my life. And to leave a legacy of life, love after I take my last breath. That's my purpose.
I love that. And you know what?
And
It ties back into what you said earlier, which is, who do you want to be? Who do you need to be? Who do you want to be? And who do you need to be to achieve that?
It's so true. And I anchored it first in two values, right? Like many of us, I went through an exercise of coming up with 10 or 12 or 15 values. But in some coursework with Brene Brown, she inspired us to come up with two. So my two, right? My two are integrity and serenity.
Integrity and those are lovely. Because if you live in integrity, you're going to be serene, are you not?
That's very true. Lovely. I never thought about it that way, right? Yep. And on top of that, it means that as I continue to breathe life into my purpose, right? Love. And creating that obviously creates serenity for me. And of course, love is an invitation for me to create that from a place of integrity for myself and with other people. So it's a reminder. It lives for me today. As I said, it might change tomorrow depending on what I bump up against. But ultimately, I think purpose can guide. It certainly is guiding many of my life decisions. It influences my behavior. It shapes goals in my life. It shapes intentions in my life. It certainly offers me a sense of direction. And of course, it creates meaning, because of course, the meaning it can create for me is in this relationship with you, right? My purpose of love connects me to you. Purpose can create a connection to the coaching work I do. It can connect me to, it lies in the responsibilities to family and friends. And of course, ultimately, the source of purpose, my purpose in life, was really sought through spirituality. That's how it really came. I think it came more through me, Mheyah, than me being kind of an intellectual creator of it. I just kind of sat back and in my partnership with the universe, in my whisperings to the divine, in my desire to remember that all I need to ask the universe for, and what I'm asking for is it's always got to be crystal clear. So when I sat, before I kind of dove into the work, it was this notion of, wow, can I be open to a whisper from the divine in terms of who I want to be in my life? And ultimately, when I looked back, and I'll talk about a couple of questions that folks can ask themselves in landing on a purpose a little bit later on, but it was this notion of, why don't I just be quiet and allow the whispers of the divine to actually inspire this purpose statement for me? It made it so much easier.
Well, you said some really, really beautiful things there. I love how you express yourself. It sounded like there's some really good learnings in there that you had, but also something you could bring to others to learn, like you're saying,
Very
the
true.
question. But what I loved
Yeah.
also, I just wanted to acknowledge was that that purpose and meaning really is individual. It's very individual. It's about ourselves.
Oh,
It's about bringing only ourselves to the world. And that's what I think I got out of the grad speech, is that he was saying this is it's personal, it's individual, it's what you bring to the world. It's just you, the essence of who you are. And then you described it so beautifully in terms of your journey coming into it being through a spiritual process and all of that. It's interesting because I've always said, do everything with great love. That's an old quote from, I can't remember who it was now, somebody famous. But you expressed it so much better in terms of, if I woke up every morning and went, my purpose is to love, in a way that feels even, feels more, it feels more to me for some reason. I'm connecting to that more, is that today my purpose is just to love, whatever that looks like, because that's what's the most important thing. There's nothing more important to
that's
me.
beautiful, Mheyah. And I'm right there with you. I do 3 things when I wake up in the morning.
Okay.
One is, because I have a choice, right? It can be either good God morning or good morning God. So I choose good morning God. And then I'm grateful, right, that my eyes open in another day, because I know that somebody took their last breath yesterday who might be really grateful that their eyes got to open for another day. So it's quite humbling for me. And then the third is, how are you going to love today, Thomas? Because ultimately, if I'm not breathing love, if I'm not breathing some degree of action into my purpose tied around love, it is really just words written on a page, right? And I agree with you. I think for the close to 8 billion of us on the planet, there are 8 billion different purposes, right? They're all unique. They're all unique. And of course, mine has certainly evolved. It's shifted. It's changed throughout my life in response to kind of evolving priorities, fluctuations of my own experiences. And of course, given the circumstance that we're in today, I'm hearing a lot from my clients that they're really, really questioning purpose in the face of COVID.
Oh, I agree. I think everyone's saying the same thing. And I
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think we touched on that last week a little bit about how people are going through that process of reevaluating.
Agreed.
And you just said something else, which really just sparked my thing, was like, purpose in a way is the action word. Purpose is an action.
The verb.
It's doing, purpose is doing your needs, your values, your principles, and your love all wrapped together. So if you take all of that, purpose and needs and values and all of that, heart, love, and then whatever it is that you come up with in that process, from that place, purpose is the action word, which then leads to, which to me leads to meaningful and fulfillment and in life. I think that if you have that and you can do that, be that and do that, then that can bring us, I think, to that place of meaningfulness.
And I mean, it's a brilliant observation. And I also want to acknowledge that for the work that perhaps some folks aren't comfortable, that might be more heart-centered, your purpose really lived for me in my mind. And what I learned to do, and I call it the 18-inch journey, Mheyah, this journey from my head to my heart is about 18 inches. And purpose, that's kind of cute. It reminds me. Yeah, it reminds me that ultimately that's my job, to bring it here. But I also want to have folks understand that you can do it here. It can live here. And ultimately, so for you, when you landed on this notion of wanting to support and help people in a way that you questioned when you were 6 years old, so a lovely thought, but if you weren't in action around seeking out where you would go to school and ultimately doing that degree for yourself, whatever purpose you had probably wouldn't have that much effectiveness in the world if you actually didn't kind of spring to action to eventually bring that purpose to life, and bring it to life in a way today that has everything to do with your acknowledgement of, yeah, that's energy I want to be, but in order to actually be that counselor, there was something that you had to do. So it's this notion that the two are important, but I'm going to suggest, at least for me, I'll own it, that the beingness, right? The beingness for me is a bigger resonance around how it is that I want to move myself through this lifetime. Who am I going to be when I love my family? Who am I going to be when I love my husband? Who am I going to be when I love my family and my friends? And then I realized, oh, there's some action for me, because of course love for me is a verb. There's some things that I want to do in order to have people understand that I have love for them.
Can you tell us some more about that?
I can. The commitment I have in my relationship with my husband. Yeah, we met 12 years ago. We had a 20-minute conversation on a beach in Hawaii. And the foundation of the relationship that would begin in that 20 minutes, we didn't know it at the time, of course, was this immense respect that both of us had for each other. Right? I would tell a story of what was going on for me in my life at that time in 2009. Adam would relate a story that had been going on for him. Mine related to kind of leaving behind some work I'd been doing for 11 or 12 years. Adam would share with me a relationship that had changed over a year ago that was still painful for him. But what we realized was we initially had this great respect for one another. So one of the foundational pieces in our relationship that I constantly do work towards is respect. We've plunked love on top of respect for each other. It wasn't love that we plunked respect on top of, it was respect. So the action that I have all the time with my husband is to respect his knowing, his understanding, his perception. I don't have to be convinced of it. If I know it works for him, the most respectful thing I can do is to support him. So the foundation of action in my love with my husband is respect.
Yes, and I would absolutely agree that actually I have always felt that respect was the foundation for love. Yes. Absolutely. I'm hearing you 100% and like going, okay, high five to that. Thank you very much. That's exactly. Yeah, I get that. And so that's how you live out. That's just one example, obviously, of how you live out your purpose every day.
Correct. Yes.
And I think, and I believe that I am the same as well. And for me, I think part of my purpose in terms of an action word is, and my love for others is to be as responsible as I can within my interactions and my relationships, whether it's a personal one, a professional one. So for me, it's one of my values is responsibility, and what that means in terms of owning my own experience, not projecting it on others. So that purpose, I know I have it and I feel it, and I can tell if I'm out of integrity with it. And so I love what you're saying about integrity and serenity. And so I think that being in integrity for oneself is hugely important to purpose. Sounds a little bit maybe like that's difficult to understand.
It might be intellectually difficult to understand. And of course, when you and I chose this topic and I began to kind of sit with what it meant, and I realized, wow, I could go a couple of different places here, and both are equally as powerful. And one would be this intellectual exercise and landing on that comment that you just made, which I think is brilliant, or a combination of both. Be able to have it lived and explained here, because that's equally as important, and that it also come from this place as well. Because like you said of your son, who in your experience resonates with just his beingness, what perhaps his purpose might be. I wanted to share that because I sat with this notion of, so do we have to go out and find purpose, or can we simply reflect on the values or the beliefs that we have in our lives and somehow find purpose that way? So I wanted to share that I have a dear friend, who suddenly passed away not too long ago. He lived a purposeful life, Mheyah, that was centered. It was centered on his commitment and his love for his family, and of course serving others. So love of family and being in service. And the interesting thing that I began to think about as I thought about his journey was that he wasn't a seeker right? He didn't seek out his purpose. He didn't read, right? He didn't read transformational books. He didn't delve into self-help books, particularly ones that were on purpose. He never, as far as I know, he never asked the question, what should I live for? He just knew. He knew what gave him joy. And of course, that was to serve his family and the people in his life. And of course, I think what he landed on was, I found another great quote by Emerson. I think he landed on really breathing life into this. Let me read it to you. The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. He showed so much compassion. He showed so much kindness. And he lived purpose and commitment based on those things. And no, he wasn't famous, right? This notion of a lot of people landing on a purpose, somehow thinking it's going to create something outside of themselves that's bigger than the internal bit that's important for them. And in the end, I thought, wow, he was simply good.
It sounds like he just lived it. It sounds like he
so
just
true, right?
was.
Yeah, he just was. He knew what worked for him. He knew who it is that he needed to be to family and friends, right? And of course, I think not all of us are like my friend. He just knew what his purpose was in life, and he just did it, right? Some of us need, right? I needed some guidance to begin this journey that was connected to what my purpose was. And of course, I think in our culture today, especially with this social media hype, Mheyah, knowing your purpose of life kind of lands in this notion of you should, therefore it becomes the major criteria for measuring how happy you are. And of course, I think that's, I just think that's not true at all, right? There's lots of, I think the fuel from social media is this notion of, right, creating some pressure for you to know your purpose, because if you don't know it, then chances are, and what's reflected back to you, is that you're not living the best life, because somebody that you're looking at who you think is on purpose in social media, you would think is not simply true if you don't find that as well. So I think we've got to be really careful. So my dear friend, right, he really breathed life, right? That our purpose in life sometimes has nothing to do with pursuing happiness, but more to do with how does it, my friend, lived, right? He really lived a life that was just so amazing.
Yeah, I really love that. And again, it takes me back to social media. You're looking and judging yourself based on that. And the only way to really find purpose, again, is just through your own authentic expression of who you are and who you want to be. And it can be mirrored back to us. You'll kind of I'll own it. I'm jealous of your son that he's got a mom who can reflect back to him. Perhaps, right, my dear one, you've got this. I'm so jealous. I'll own it. It's my stuff. He might not think that though. My boys go, "Oh, are you going to ask me a deep and meaningful question?" That's what I get. Or, that's too deep. I'm not talking about that. But never from the youngest one. The youngest one embraces the conversation like you and I do. He's willing to dive deep anytime. And so it's like, oh, I just love that boy.
It feels to me that you two have got this really soul, and not that you don't have it to some degree with the other children, but perhaps there's more of a soulful connection. Or Mheyah, perhaps, that the two of you are actually breathing life into very similar purposes.
I think you're right. I think it's that we actually are more similar, and or we have similarities that are different, let's say it that way, than with my other sons. But we do definitely have that similarity and that need to understand the want and the desire to want to understand ourselves and our impact in the world, as well as to understand others. And so I think that that's something that we definitely share. And I think and I hope and I'm not sure if he sees what an incredible gift it is that he has to be able to do that. He's incredibly responsible for his own impact in the world. And I do think that he's on a really, really great journey to channeling wherever he wants to go, that's going to be about who he needs to be. And he talks about that a lot, I'm just going to be me. And I just love that
Wow.
in a very simple way. And so I think that he's on a good journey to find his ultimate purpose, kind of in he's just being the way
Mm.
he is designed to be. That's who, like your friend, maybe doing more seeking and searching because he's grown up with me. And actually he's been more like an only child. So because the others were all grown up, there's a big age difference. So
Of
he's been with me
course.
the longest. And so we have quite the the wonderful heart-centered communication and connection. And so I really value that as well. So with all of them, but it's just different with each one of them. So
And I love how you say that as a mom. It's just different, right? Because I remember, one of 10 kids. Mom, am I your favorite? Oh dear, I love you. I love all of you in different ways.
absolutely. But they all know that they're my favorite.
They all know that you're favorite. That is so great.
In fact, they phone me and they go, "It's your favorite son phoning."
Oh,
All of them.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so
Mheyah,
they do.
have you found in your life, excuse me for interrupting, have you
No.
found in your life, I certainly have, that purpose has also given me the benefit of drawing to me those that might also have a similar purpose? And long ago, I learned this analogy, and it was a coach, maybe it was a therapist, said, Thomas, if you were given a couple of choices in your life, and the choices were this. One would be you could be a magnet and draw to you those things that you felt were important and things that you felt were of value to you. Or, and I'm sure there were more, but he presented two. Or would you like to be the iron filings that are drawn towards other magnets? And at the time, I was a little bit stymied. I wasn't sure what he meant.
Me
So I
too.
said to him, okay, so for clarity, what exactly do you mean? He said, think of it this way. He said, as a
Yeah.
magnet, you get to draw to you those things that you really love, those people that you really love, those experiences that you really love. He said, as an iron filing, you're at risk of being drawn to magnets that perhaps don't resonate with you. And most importantly, you're at risk of being drawn to other people's magnets. Because of course, and I remembered, taking a little horseshoe magnet as a little boy and putting a couple paper clips, kind of close to it, and all of a sudden, zing.
Yeah, I know. I did that the other day.
So yeah, that image came to my mind, and ultimately what he said was, imagine if you consciously had an opportunity to invoke that energy that you could draw to you. And he said the other bit is from time to time, and I've had some amazing people that I've been the iron filings with and I've been drawn to, but I found, Mheyah, that with purpose, right, to love and to be a creator of that legacy for me in my life, it's amazing the love, and I would include my husband, I would include my family, I would include some very dear friends, a small circle, and some amazing experiences that are all grounded in powerful love. So the idea of purpose, being able to draw to you that into which you are, right, is the law of attraction. That into which you are, you bring
Yeah.
to you. And in this particular case, I'm always reminding myself, be a magnet, Thomas. And not that there's anything wrong with iron filings, but being a magnet allows me to get clear and discerning about what energy I want to draw to me. And probably 99.9% of the time, Mheyah, it will be a draw to something that I have a sense is infused with love.
I love that. I would like to be a magnet as well. Having said that, part of my loving journey in this world, living purpose, is that I also have the gifts of learning how to discern. And that's been a lifelong journey of discernment and learning the art of boundary setting in love for myself instead of giving too much of myself away. So there is a flow and a balance in terms of that. So what I'm loving is, yes, I agree, a magnet. The people that I have in my life, I just love them. And and so I have drawn those into my life, as you say.
Yes.
But also I must have a flip side as well with my magnet.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no. I'm right there. And it's most times being, for me, A, not remembering to be that magnet, and B, being drawn as an iron filing, being drawn to an allure of something that initially I might think. And of course, oftentimes even when I say that, I'm reminded of that notion of thinking. It's my intellectual, it's my egotistical mind that might convince the divine in me that actually, that is love. And of course, I will eventually learn through some really great lessons. No, it's kind of the notion of it was kind of shiny and new, but when you scratch the surface, you actually just got more surface. There was no depth to it, right?
That's a perfect description of it. I don't think I could have remotely eloquently said it like you just did. So even being the magnet, there's still all sorts of stuff. And I think that in living purpose and drawing people into your life that have lived through that same love and responsibility, for me, it comes up to a lot of that, is having people in my life that are like that and embody those integrity and embody those principles and values, that the other things just some things have to be let go of.
That's such a great point, because here's what I didn't realize was that when I landed on it and love became a driving force for me, I had some folks in my life that actually weren't about that. Mm-hmm. So it meant that, and I didn't like it. Even now, when I share this with you, Mheyah, I can kind of feel this anxiety in my stomach, and I got a little bit of a chill. But it was this exercise, and nobody told me this. Damn it, nobody said, Thomas, you land on that, it becomes a driving force for you. You may have to let go, or you may choose to let go of some folks that aren't a resonance for that aren't love. And it's exactly what happened to me. And it's like, oh.
I know. It's interesting because I think I lived a part of the first half of my life, and I think this is important. I don't want to label it, but I mean, if I had to put a label, I would say maybe I was naive. I thought that everybody in the world had the same values and the same principles as me. I don't know what made me think that, but I did. And that everybody would come from that point of integrity and love like I did. And so when I say I'm learning the art of discernment in terms of living my purpose, that's a big thing for me, because not everybody is going to be on that same journey, that same path, or be willing. You know, I sometimes ask, is somebody willing or able? Are they both? Are they one or the other? Willing and able to want to be in that same tribe, if you know what I mean. So, sometimes I've often felt when I was younger, especially building my purpose in my mind and in my heart. In my heart is where I build my purpose. Where it shows up is not knowing and honestly being unable to see that not everybody lives in that same way.
True. And isn't one of the gifts of for me, the gifts of aging, the grace of aging and the benefit of that is that I can notice it and just let it be.
I know.
And just let it be. Yeah, completely fine.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. So we're getting towards the end. We're not quite at the end, but we know, we have to end on time.
Indeed.
To wrap it up, it's been an amazingly deep and meaningful conversation. I hope all of you have enjoyed that, and thank you so much for your comments. It's been great to read them while we're like, Thomas, can you see them too as well? Yes,
I can.
Everyone's
yes, I can.
Oh, it's just
amazing.
It just makes my heart feel so nice when I see that someone's appreciating what we're talking about and how much. This conversation in terms of purpose, let's just wrap it up. Like, I think at the end of the day, Thomas has made some wonderful points about how it's about your authenticity, how it's about who you need to be in the world to fulfill your contribution, how to fulfill your needs, your values, and your principles, and what's important to you. And then some people take it even to how do you want to change the world, and in your small way or your big way, right? And some people know and some people don't. But I think that it's really about that piece, which is, what do you want to change about the world, and how can I be my most authentic self, and who do I need to be? Who do I need to be, not do, to fulfill that? It's whether it's a goal or it's unconscious, like your friend, he just lived it. He wasn't aware of it. He wasn't conscious that that's what he was doing. We've put labels on it. Some of us have to seek for it and look for it, and for so many different reasons. It's not like I came from a background that would have facilitated, good values or principles or anything that would have been healthy in that way. So learning for me has been a journey to get through that. So it's not always as easy as growing up and going, yeah, I'm just going to have integrity and I know who I am because my parents have facilitated that. Some of us not so much.
Some of us not so much. Yeah, indeed. And maybe me, I could just take 30 seconds to reflect.
Please.
I thought kind of 3 easy things that might support people in either living purpose or finding purpose. And the first one would be stop trying to find yourself reflected in your social media. Actually, consider even a social media detox, right? Because
I love that.
You're not there. I'm not there, right? So stop looking for purpose in these washed over representations that people will put up in Facebook. Perhaps asking these 3 simple questions, because there were ones for me, is what is the legacy I want to leave behind? What will people say to me? What will people say about me after I've taken my last breath? And what difference have I made in other people's lives? I think those are just 3 simple questions that you could ask that might allow you to begin to focus on purpose. And then finally, focus on some specific actions that will bring you some joy in terms of breathing some life into that purpose. And I found a great quote by Patrick Ness that says, you do not write your life with words. You write it with actions. What you think is not important. Yeah, what you think is not important. It is only important what you do or how you be.
It's so true. Oh, thank you for winding that up with that. It's absolutely beautiful. And what I would want, and I did that work somewhere where you write your legacy.
Yes,
and,
me too.
And I wanted it to say that that Mheyah was a great friend, and that she loved big.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And so when we started the conversations, that was my only intention, was to be a good friend, have the conversation with T, and love big. So
and love big.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah. So that was the intention for this. And so thank you so much. And I don't want to run over or else we'll lose our video. So
good. Okay, no, let's not do that.
Please come back next week. We want to chat. Bring your favorite cuppa, and Thomas and I'll be back next week with a new topic. We'll post what it is so you know. And obviously we'll post the video as well so you can see it afterwards. Thomas, I love you. Thank you all so very much for showing up, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care. And I'm going to go this way.